You've seen the twist, you've heard the famous Bible verse, and chances are, you've already argued about what was glowing inside that briefcase. But beneath Pulp Fiction's sharp dialogue, iconic scenes, and cult status, there's a deeper layer most viewers never notice. Because Pulp Fiction wasn't just a stylish crime film, it was a risky experiment that broke storytelling rules, challenged audience expectations, and nearly collapsed under its own ambition. Behind the cool conversations, the sudden violence, and the unforgettable characters, there exists a collection of strange, surprising, and often overlooked truths that quietly shaped the film's legacy. From dangerous creative decisions, to moments that were never meant to work, to choices that changed the fate of the entire movie. Today, we're pulling back the curtain and taking a closer look at the story behind the story. These are the numbers that reveal what Pulp Fiction really was, and why it became something far bigger than anyone expected. Number 20. It won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. In the spring of 1994, Pulp Fiction shocked the film world by winning the Palme d'Or, the highest honor at the Cannes Film Festival. At the time, Cannes was known for celebrating high art, prestige cinema, not violent crime films filled with casual conversations about foot massages, fast food, and heroin. When Quentin Tarantino walked onto the stage to accept the award, the reaction was deeply divided. Some audience members cheered and gave a standing ovation, while others loudly booed. The moment perfectly captured how controversial the film was upon release. Despite the backlash, the win instantly elevated Pulp Fiction from an independent gamble to an international phenomenon. Overnight, Tarantino became one of the most talked-about filmmakers in the world, and the film's success helped turn Miramax into a dominant force throughout the rest of the decade. What made the victory even more remarkable was that Pulp Fiction didn't just win an award, it forced the industry to reconsider what kind of films deserved serious recognition. Number 19. Tarantino's foot fetish is on full display. Quentin Tarantino is known for many things, but one of his most openly acknowledged obsessions is his fascination with feet. Pulp Fiction is one of the clearest examples of that fixation appearing on screen. Throughout the film, the camera repeatedly lingers on women's bare feet. The most famous example is Mia Wallace, played by Uma Thurman, walking barefoot across the floor of Jack Rabbit Slim's before her dance with Vincent Vega. Later, after she overdoses, the framing once again draws attention to her feet as she lies on the couch. The pattern continues with Fabienne, Butch's French girlfriend, who is introduced through an extended shot of her bare feet in the hotel room. Even the dialogue reinforces this theme, most notably in the long conversation between Jules and Vincent about foot massages. Tarantino has openly admitted in interviews that this is not accidental. It's a personal preference he chooses not to hide, making it part of his unmistakable cinematic signature, rather than a subtle background detail. Number 18. Marvin's death was partially improvised. One of the most shocking and darkly comedic moments in Pulp Fiction is Marvin's sudden death in the backseat of the car. Coming right after Jules and Vincent survive a shootout, the scene begins calmly, with the two men casually debating fate and miracles. Without warning, Vincent turns to ask Marvin a question and accidentally shoots him in the face. The abruptness of the moment is what makes it so memorable. What many viewers don't realize is that much of this scene was improvised. The script only outlined the basic events. Vincent shoots Marvin, the car becomes a disaster, and they call in the wolf. When filming began, Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta began bouncing lines off each other naturally, reacting in real time. Travolta's panicked defensiveness and Jackson's disbelief were not delivered exactly as written. Instead, they created a spontaneous rhythm that transformed the scene into one of the most quoted moments in Tarantino's career. The result was a perfect blend of shock and humor, proving that some of Pulp Fiction's most iconic moments came from controlled chaos rather than rigid scripting. Number 17. Harvey Keitel shot all his scenes in just 2 days. When Harvey Keitel appeared as Winston Wolfe, the impeccably dressed fixer who arrives to clean up Jules and Vincent's bloody mess, his presence immediately commanded authority. Calm, efficient, and precise, the Wolf felt like a character who had lived far beyond the few minutes he appeared on screen. Because of that impact, many viewers assumed Keitel spent weeks filming the role. In reality, he completed every single scene in just 2 days. From his first phone call to his final handshake, the Wolf's entire arc was filmed within a 48-hour window. The tight schedule wasn't a creative choice, but a necessity. Keitel was involved in other projects and agreed to appear only if his time commitment was kept extremely short. Despite the limitation, his performance became one of the most memorable in the film. Beyond the screen, Keitel played an even more important role. He was one of the earliest supporters of Pulp Fiction and used his influence to help the project secure funding. In just 2 days, he not only delivered an iconic character, but helped bring the entire film to life. Number 16. The film skipped studio logos at the beginning. If you watch Pulp Fiction closely from the very first second, you might notice something unusual. Before a single line of dialogue is spoken, there are no studio logos. No Miramax, no A Band Apart, no sweeping orchestral score announcing a major production. Instead, the film opens on a black screen, followed by a dictionary definition of the word pulp. Quentin Tarantino later confirmed this choice was entirely deliberate. He wanted to set the tone immediately and signal that this film would not follow traditional Hollywood rules. By jumping straight into the definition, describing lurid stories and sensational subject matter, Tarantino grounded the audience in the spirit of old pulp magazines before plunging them into the chaotic diner robbery with Pumpkin and Honey. Bunny. The absence of logos wasn't just a stylistic flourish, it was a statement. From the very beginning, Pulp Fiction announced that it would play by its own rules. Number 15. Tarantino wrote much of the script in Amsterdam. The screenplay for Pulp Fiction wasn't written in a Hollywood office or a studio writer's room. Much of it came together while Quentin Tarantino was living in Amsterdam, often writing in cafes while chain-smoking cigarettes and scribbling notes. At the time, Tarantino had just finished Reservoir Dogs and was being hailed as a rising voice in independent cinema. Rather than stay in Los Angeles and embrace the pressure, he left for Europe in search of distance and inspiration. That experience directly shaped the film's dialogue. The famous conversations between Vincent and Jules about cultural differences, Royale with cheese, hash bars, and tipping customs were pulled straight from Tarantino's own observations while living abroad. Those details weren't random jokes. They reflected how slightly off everyday life felt to him in Europe, a sense of cultural dissonance that made its way into the film's rhythm and voice. In many ways, Pulp Fiction carries traces of Amsterdam not just in its dialogue, but in the mindset that helped shape its unconventional storytelling. Number 14. Jack Rabbit Slim's was built from scratch. One of the most memorable locations in Pulp Fiction is Jack Rabbit Slim's, the retro-themed restaurant where Vincent Vega takes Mia Wallace for dinner. With its Elvis impersonators, Marilyn Monroe waitresses, classic movie cars turned into booths, and checkerboard floors, the place feels authentic enough that many viewers assumed it was a real diner somewhere in Los Angeles. In reality, Jack Rabbit Slim's never existed. The entire restaurant was built from scratch on a soundstage in Culver City, California. Every detail was carefully designed to match Quentin Tarantino's vision of a pop culture fever dream inspired by 1950s nostalgia and pulp-era excess. The set was so convincing that, after the film's release, replicas of Jack Rabbit Slim's began appearing around the world. What started as a fictional location became a real-world symbol of the film's lasting cultural impact. Number 13. Bruce Willis took a pay cut for the role. By the time Pulp Fiction went into production, Bruce Willis was already an established Hollywood star. With major blockbusters like Die Hard behind him, he was accustomed to leading roles, large action set pieces, and substantial paychecks. However, because Pulp Fiction was an independent film with a limited budget, Willis agreed to take a significantly reduced salary just to be part of the project. At the time, many industry insiders viewed the decision as a risky move, especially since Quentin Tarantino was still an unproven director. Willis signed on to play Butch Coolidge, a boxer driven by personal honor rather than fame or success. The role allowed him to step away from his action hero image and deliver a more grounded performance. In the end, the gamble paid off, adding depth to his career and helping solidify Pulp Fiction as a film driven by commitment rather than star power. Number 12. Mia's overdose scene was filmed backwards. One of the most intense moments in Pulp Fiction is Mia Wallace's heroin overdose scene. After mistaking Vincent's heroin for cocaine, Mia collapses, sending Vincent into a frantic rush to save her life. The sequence ends with the shocking image of a syringe being slammed into her chest. What most viewers don't realize is that the needle never actually moved toward Uma Thurman at all. For safety reasons, the scene was filmed in reverse. John Travolta pressed the syringe against her chest and then pulled it away. In post-production, the footage was reversed to create the illusion that the needle was being thrust into her. This simple practical technique avoided the need for dangerous stunts or heavy visual effects. The reversed motion also added a stiff, unnatural rhythm to the moment, heightening the discomfort and tension of the scene. Without CGI or digital tricks, the filmmakers created one of the most unforgettable sequences in the film, using nothing more than clever filmmaking. Number 11. John Travolta improvised his famous dance. The dance scene between Vincent Vega and Mia Wallace is one of the most iconic moments in Pulp Fiction. Watching Travolta glide across the floor with a cigarette in hand, while Uma Thurman mirrors his movements, feels effortless and strangely unforgettable. What many fans don't know is that the dance was largely improvised. When Quentin Tarantino wrote the scene, his goal was not to create a polished routine, but to capture the spirit of old 1960s dance contests and vintage pop culture. According to interviews, Tarantino gave Travolta only one piece of direction. He wanted him to dance like he did in Saturday Night Fever, but this time while trying not to look cool. Travolta took that idea and blended classic dance moves with awkward, offbeat gestures. He incorporated references to older television dances like the swim and the monkey, while also inventing movements on the spot. The result was a performance that felt intentionally uncool, perfectly matching Vincent Vega's detached, drugged-out personality. The scene not only became one of the film's most memorable sequences, but also reminded audiences of the charisma that first made Travolta a star. Number 10. The Bad Mother wallet belonged to Tarantino. One of the most famous props in Pulp Fiction is Jules Winfield's wallet. During the diner robbery scene, Jules calmly tells Pumpkin to find his wallet, identifying it as the one that says, "Bad Mother." What many viewers don't realize is that the wallet wasn't created by the prop department. It actually belonged to Quentin Tarantino himself. He had purchased it from a novelty store long before the film was made and decided to use it in the movie. Tarantino believed the wallet perfectly represented Jules' character, confident, intimidating, and unapologetically bold. After the film's release, the wallet became a pop culture icon, with replicas flooding the market. But the original began not as a movie prop, but as a personal item pulled straight from Tarantino's own pocket. Number 9. The F word is said 265 times. Pulp Fiction is known for its raw and unfiltered dialogue, and nowhere is that more evident than in its use of profanity. Throughout the film's runtime of approximately 154 minutes, the F word is spoken an estimated 265 times. At the time of its release in 1994, this made Pulp Fiction one of the most profane mainstream films in Hollywood history. However, the heavy use of profanity wasn't random or gratuitous. Tarantino used it as rhythm, punctuation, and characterization. For Tarantino, criminals weren't meant to speak like polished movie villains. They were supposed to ramble, interrupt each other, curse casually, and contradict themselves like real people. Characters such as Jules Winfield and Marcellus Wallace used profanity to assert dominance, while others used it to inject dark humor into tense situations. The language helped define the film's voice, making the dialogue feel alive, unpredictable, and unmistakably Tarantino. Number 8. The film was made for just $8 million. Considering its massive cultural impact, many people are surprised to learn that Pulp Fiction was made on a budget of only $8 million. In Hollywood terms, even in the early 1990s, that amount was relatively small, especially for a film with such a large cast and ambitious vision. Out of the total budget, roughly $5 million went directly toward actor salaries, leaving only $3 million to cover everything else, including sets, costumes, film stock, equipment, locations, and post-production. There was no room for extravagance. To make it work, the production relied on tight shooting schedules, minimal lighting setups, and creative camera work. Even elaborate locations like Jackrabbit Slims were constructed using inexpensive materials and efficient labor. Every dollar had to appear on screen. The film's success proved that creativity and discipline could outweigh budget size, helping redefine what independent films were capable of achieving in the mainstream. Number 7. Uma Thurman almost turned down the role of Mia Wallace. It's now impossible to imagine Pulp Fiction without Uma Thurman as Mia Wallace, but at the time, she was hesitant to accept the role. Thurman was known for more traditional art house performances and was unsure about the film's violent tone and unconventional structure. She was particularly concerned about the intensity of Mia's overdose scene. When Quentin Tarantino first sent her the script, she didn't immediately respond with enthusiasm. Determined to cast her, Tarantino personally called Thurman and read the script to her out loud, page by page. The conversation convinced her that the character was more than a surface-level role. Once she agreed, Thurman worked closely with Tarantino to shape Mia's look, voice, and iconic black bob hairstyle. The decision paid off. The role earned her an Academy Award nomination and transformed Mia Wallace into one of the most recognizable characters of the decade. Number 6. Tarantino originally wanted to play Jules himself. Before Samuel L. Jackson became inseparable from the role of Jules Winfield, Quentin Tarantino initially considered playing the character himself. At the time, Tarantino admired low-budget filmmakers who appeared in their own films and had already acted in Reservoir Dogs. Early on, another actor, Paul Calderone, was also being seriously considered for the role. Samuel L. Jackson's first audition didn't go well, and for a moment, the part seemed out of reach. Everything changed when Jackson returned for a second audition. According to those present, he entered the room with intensity and confidence, fully embodying Jules. When he finished, Tarantino reportedly turned to the producers and said, "We found Jules." Letting go of the role was one of the best decisions Tarantino ever made. Jackson's performance gave the film its moral weight, transforming Jules into the character who questions his path and ultimately chooses change. Number 5. John Travolta researched heroin by taking wine baths. John Travolta's performance as Vincent Vega captured the slow, detached mindset of a heroin user without resorting to exaggerated behavior. His relaxed posture, delayed reactions, and half-present expressions made the character feel unsettlingly real. To prepare for the role, Travolta sought advice from a recovering heroin user. Instead of studying documentaries or mimicking cliches, he was given an unusual suggestion: drink wine, sit in a hot bath, and allow the body to float. The sensation, he was told, closely mirrored the calm, drifting effect of heroin. Travolta followed the advice. He soaked in a warm bathtub for extended periods, focusing on the feeling of mental separation rather than physical intoxication. The goal was to understand the internal stillness and disconnection associated with heroin use. The approach worked. His subtle performance earned him an Academy Award nomination and played a major role in re-establishing him as a serious actor after years of career decline. Number 4. Michael Madsen was originally meant to play Vincent Vega. Before John Travolta stepped into the black suit as Vincent Vega, the role had been written specifically for Michael Madsen. Quentin Tarantino had just worked with Madsen on Reservoir Dogs, where he delivered a chilling performance as Mr. Blonde. Tarantino envisioned Vincent Vega as Mr. Blonde's brother, creating a shared criminal universe between the two films. There were even early ideas for a Vega Brothers spin-off that would connect both characters in a future project. However, scheduling conflicts got in the way. Madsen had already committed to another film, forcing him to turn the role down. Tarantino was disappointed but moved on, eventually casting Travolta, whose career was at a low point at the time. Years later, Madsen admitted that turning down Pulp Fiction was one of the biggest regrets of his career. The role that passed him by ended up redefining someone else's. Number 3. Samuel L. Jackson nearly lost the role of Jules. During the casting process, actor Paul Calderone delivered a strong audition for the role of Jules Winfield, impressing both Quentin Tarantino and the producers. At the same time, Samuel L. Jackson's initial audition failed to make a lasting impression. Rather than accept defeat, Jackson took matters into his own hands. He paid for his own flight back to Los Angeles and demanded a second audition. This time, he didn't simply read the lines, he dominated the room. Witnesses later recalled that his performance was intense, focused, and intimidating. When he finished, the room reportedly fell silent. Tarantino then turned to the producers and said, "We found Jules." That second audition didn't just secure Jackson the role. It gave Pulp Fiction its voice, its moral center, and one of the most iconic performances in modern cinema. Number 2. No one knows what was inside the briefcase. One of the most enduring mysteries in Pulp Fiction is the glowing briefcase. It is the object Vincent and Jules are sent to retrieve, the item Marcellus Wallace wants desperately, and the same prize that Pumpkin and Honey Bunny attempt to steal. Yet the audience never finds out what's inside. Whenever the briefcase is opened, a warm golden light spills out, illuminating the faces of whoever looks inside. Vincent reacts with a single word, "beautiful," and then the film moves on, refusing to explain anything further. Over the years, countless theories have emerged. Some believe the briefcase contains Marcellus Wallace's soul, pointing to the bandage on the back of his neck and the combination lock set to 666. Others argue it held gold bars, diamonds, or something supernatural. The truth is far simpler and far more deliberate. According to Quentin Tarantino and co-writer Roger Avery, there was never a defined object inside the briefcase. The glow was created using a simple light bulb placed inside the prop. The mystery was intentional. Tarantino wanted audiences to project their own desires, fears, and interpretations onto the object. By never revealing the answer, the briefcase became less about what it contained and more about what viewers brought to it. Number 1. The film's timeline is completely out of order. At first glance, Pulp Fiction feels chaotic, jumping between characters and events without warning. Scenes that seem connected suddenly give way to moments that appear unrelated, creating a narrative that feels fractured and unpredictable. In reality, the entire film is carefully constructed out of chronological order. The diner robbery that opens the movie actually takes place near the end of the story. Vincent Vega's death occurs before several scenes in which he is still alive. Jules' final confrontation in the diner happens after much of the violence we've already witnessed. This structure was not designed to confuse audiences for style alone. By rearranging the timeline, Tarantino reshaped how character arcs are experienced. Jules' transformation from a ruthless hitman to someone searching for meaning lands with greater impact because it arrives at the end of the film. If the story were told in order, Pulp Fiction would resemble a fairly straightforward crime narrative. By scrambling the timeline, Tarantino turned it into something more reflective, forcing viewers to actively piece the story together. That approach left a lasting mark on cinema. After Pulp Fiction, nonlinear storytelling became far more common in Hollywood, influencing films that followed. Decades later, the film still invites debate, rewatching, and reinterpretation, proof that its power lies not just in what it shows, but in how it chooses to show it. Those are the numbers that reveal the hidden truth behind Pulp Fiction. From moments that were never planned, to decisions that nearly changed everything. These behind-the-scenes details are what keep the film alive decades later. Now we want to hear from you. Which number surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video, share it with other film fans, and subscribe for more stories behind the facts.
Приготовлю. Сними рубашку и найди сердце.
Отлично. Ну тогда мне нужен толстый марк.
Вот, да. Все, окей. Кажется,
Стану
я
короче.
тоже не буду.
Я никогда этого
Я
не
тоже
делал.
никогда этого не делал.
Порядок. Что делать?